Enrique, pues tengo que dejarte ya. Tenía más preguntas para ti, pero acaba de empezar la comparecencia de Donald Trump con el presidente de Filipinas, Enrique Belli-Valier, director general de Altex Partner Gestión. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Muchas gracias.
Y ahora mismo empieza esa reunión conjunta entre el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, y el presidente de Filipinas, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. En directo desde el despacho Val.
Honestly, they didn't know what they were doing, but we have some fantastic military relationships with the Philippines, and that's been reinstituted. And Pete, I would say that you couldn't be happier, right, with the relationship. So I just want to say it's an honor to have you. We're going to talk about trade today, and we're very close to finishing a trade deal, big trade deal actually. And we do a lot of business with you. It's a lot of income coming in for both groups. But I was surprised to see the kind of numbers. They're very big, and they're going to get bigger under what we're doing and what we're proposing. And I just want to thank you for being with us. It's a great honor. You and your representative. It's really a great honor. We have a big announcement. AstraZeneca, the big drug company, is going to spend $50 billion. Just announced $50 billion in the United States in order to build various places all over the country, big manufacturing plants, pharmaceutical plants all over the country. So that's an honor. And he said they did that because of the election and because of the fact that the tariffs are placed. So they're building their facilities in New York. $50 billion, that's a big investment. And it's going to be a very good investment. I have no doubt about it. So thank you to AstraZeneca. And with that, I'd like to have you say a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Of course, we're all very happy to be here to once again reaffirm the very strong ties between the Philippines and the United States, ties that go back over 100 years. And considering the context in which we live these days, especially in my part of the world, this has evolved into as important a relationship as is possible to have. We must remember that the United States is our only treaty partner in the Philippines, and that has stood us in good stead over the years. Certainly through the Second World War, and the cultural memory of all Filipinos, down to even the school children, is that our strongest, closest, most reliable ally has always been the United States. And that is something that we value, that we are grateful for, and that we will continue to foster as we go on. With the leadership of President Trump, I am very confident that we will be able to achieve that. I think it is worthwhile to remember that it was President Trump who, in his first term, characterized the relationship between the Philippines and the United States as ironclad. And that has been necessarily the case since that time that you made that statement, sir. And it is something that the Philippines will always hold close to its heart. Thank you once again, and we are honored, and it is our great pleasure to be here and to visit with the President of the United States. Thank you, sir.
It's my great honor. Any questions, please? Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. President, do you think that Fed Chair Jerome Powell should resign?
I think he's doing a bad job, but he's going to be out pretty soon anyway. In eight months, he'll be out. But I call him too late. He's too late all the time. He should have lowered interest rates many times. Europe lowered their rate 10 times. We lowered ours none. And it's causing a problem for people that want to buy a home. Look, our economy is so strong now, we're blowing through everything. We're setting records. You know that, you see that. And whether it's the Philippines or anyone else, we're setting records at levels that nobody's ever seen before. But you know what? People aren't able to buy a house because this guy is a numbskull. He keeps the rates too high and probably doing it for political reasons. The only time I remember him cutting rates, I mean, he cut the rates just before the election to try and help Kamala or whoever he was trying to help. He probably didn't know. And he's building a building. He's $2.7 billion. They have a $900 million overrun. What is that? And that was given by Biden. That was another Biden deal. And this guy's building this building that's severely overrun. And what does he need the building for? Why does he need space for more people? So they did a big study the other day, and they called all of the great intellects and the great economists and all of the great everything. And it was 71, and only 2 got it right. Me and another gentleman that happens to be very smart. 69 people got it wrong, and the Fed got it wrong, more wrong than anybody. And, you know, he has these think tanks, and they build buildings for people that think. And it's really not thinking. It's a little bit of combination of thinking, but it's something you sort of have or you don't have. They don't. The job he's done is just terrible. He ought to raise interest rates. You know, we should be at 1%. We should be leading the world. Instead, we're paying 4%. And if you look at what that means, that's over $1 trillion in interest that we have to pay. That with the striking of a pen, we would be saving more than $1 trillion. Is that right, Scott?
Yes,
Do you have anything to say about it?
Yes, sir. I called yesterday and this morning for the Fed to do a big internal investigation to understand not their monetary policy, but everything else. The Fed has had big mission creep, and that's where a lot of the spending's going. That's why they're building these new or refurbishing these buildings. And I think they got to stay in their lane. And I think that based on the way they cut rates last fall, they should be cutting rates now.
It's inconceivable. I know the Fed very well, that they can be spending $2.7 billion to build a building. They don't do anything. It's the greatest job. You show up one day, a half a day, you make a little speech, the economy is doing well, the economy is not doing well, we're going to raise interest. And he's got it wrong. That's why I call him too late, T-O-O, too late. And it's really too bad. But it is affecting people that want to buy houses, and that shouldn't happen.
And Mr. President.
And you know, he should lower them. Those rates should be 3 points lower. That's what they should be, 3 points lower, maybe more than that.
Mr. President, I would like to ask both of you
Yes.
one person. Mr. President Marcos, next year, Philippines is going to be the rotating chair of ASEAN. I wonder, how do you plan to balance your relationship between the United States and China? And for President Trump, Kremlin yesterday said if you are going to Beijing in September, they wouldn't rule out a meeting between you and President Putin. Is such a meeting possible? And how soon do you plan to visit China?
Well, we have a lot of meetings possible. President Xi has invited me to China, and we'll probably be doing that in the not too distant future, a little bit out, but not too distant. And I've been invited by a lot of people, and we'll make those decisions pretty soon. Please.
Next side of the.
Well, as you say, we are chairing ASEAN for 2026. There is no need, in a sense, to balance, as you characterize it, to balance our relationship between the United States and China, simply because our foreign policy is an independent one, and we are essentially concerned with the defense of our territory and the exercise of our sovereign rights. Now, whether we do this not alone, we need to do this with our partners. And again, our strongest partner has always been the United States. But of course, we are trying to form coalitions and multilateral relations so that those like-minded nations who share the same values as we do, who hew to international law, most specifically the UNCLOS, present that position very clearly to anyone who has intentions of unilaterally changing the world order, and that is how we are guided in that.
And I don't mind if he gets along with China, because we're getting along with China very well. We have a very good relationship. In fact, the magnets, which is a little complex piece of material, but the magnets are coming out, very well. They're sending them in record numbers. We're getting along with China very well, and I don't mind if the president dealt with China. If that's meant, because I think he has to do what's right for his country. I've always said, make the Philippines great again. Do whatever you need to do, but you're dealing with China wouldn't bother me at all.
No, well, now it is something that we have to do in any case.
Yeah.
And certainly that.
What are your comments to the
Mr. President, do you support the Justice Department seeking an interview with Elaine Maxwell to urge the Attorney General to see?
I don't know anything about it. They're going to what? Meet her?
Your Deputy Attorney General has reached out to Elaine Maxwell's attorney asking for a new interview.
Yeah, I don't know about it, but I think it's something that sounds appropriate to do, yeah.
Do you have any concern that your Deputy Attorney General, as your former attorney, would be conducting the interview, given?
No, I have no concern. He's a very talented person. He's very smart. I didn't know that they were going to do it. I don't really follow that too much. It's sort of a witch hunt, just a continuation of the witch hunt. The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard. What they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up to 2020 in the election, they tried to rig the election and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. You know, when we caught Hillary Clinton, I said, you know what? Let's not go too far here. It's the ex-wife of a president, and I thought it was sort of terrible. And I let her off the hook, and I'm very happy I did. But it's time to start after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level. So that's really the things you should be talking about. I know nothing about the other, but I think it's appropriate that they do go.
May I ask you about that, Mr. President? Tulsi Gabbard has submitted a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. From your perspective, who should the DOJ target as part of their investigation? What specific figures in the Obama administration?
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room right here. This was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay. I have nice pictures up. They came out of the vaults. They were in there for 100 years. This is much more beautiful. We have the Declaration of Independence now in the room, which wasn't here. I guess people didn't feel too good about putting it here, but I do. But you know what? If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one look, he's guilty. It's not a question. You know, I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries. You've seen some pretty rough countries. This man has seen some pretty rough countries, but you've never seen anything like it. And we have all of the documents. And from what Tulsi told me, she's got thousands of additional documents coming. So President Obama, it was his concept, his idea, but he also got it from crooked Hillary Clinton. Crooked is a $3 bill. Hillary Clinton and her group, the Democrats, spent $12 million to Christopher Steele to write up a report that was a total fake report. Took 2 years to figure that out, but it came out that it was a total fake report. It was made up fiction. And they used that. Now, the one thing they weren't able to do was and probably the only thing I respect about the press in years is the press refused to write it before the election. They refused to put it in. The Steele report was a disaster. All lies, all fabrication, all admitted, and admitted fraud. She paid $12 million, and the Democrats, for that report to a wise guy named Christopher Steele. He wrote a phony report, and they wanted to get that report in before the election. And I'll tell you what, I talk about all the time, the fake news, how bad it is. But in this case, they wouldn't do it. They saw it, they read it, and they said, we don't believe it. And it was only after, substantially, like a month and a half after the election, that it got printed, and it was a big wisp. It was just like a bang of nothing, because the election had ended. If that report had gotten published by the New York Times or somebody, and I respect the Times for maybe only this, because they're crooked as you can be. They're a terrible paper, a crooked, corrupt paper. But for this one moment, they said, this is bullshit, we can't put this in. And neither could any other paper. Wall Street Journal's a lousy paper, very, very dishonest paper. As you see, I'm suing them for a lot of money because they do things very badly. It's got a nice name, but it's really, in my opinion, it's a terrible paper, and it can be corrupt. But just so you know, they didn't take the Steele report. It was the dossier. Remember the famous dossier? I called it the fake news dossier. The news wouldn't publish it. And I'm amazed. They had 2.5 months. It was finished, 2.5 months. That was supposed to be what was going to happen. And it got published a couple of months after the election.
El presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, que ataca directamente al expresidente norteamericano, a Barack Obama. Dice que después de que hayan ido a por él, es hora de que él haga lo propio. Acusa a Barack Obama, pues, de confabular una serie de acciones para afectar al resultado en las elecciones, de publicar una serie de informaciones y de reportes falsos en prensa afín al Partido Demócrata. Dice el presidente de Estados Unidos que después de todo lo que le han hecho, él atacaría a Obama, y que Tulsi Gabbard, la directora de inteligencia de Estados Unidos, cuenta con muchísima información, con miles de documentos que atestiguan esas acusaciones que el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, ejerce sobre el anterior presidente, al que acusa, ya decimos, de falsear una serie de informes que habrían afectado al resultado electoral. Así que el titular, dice Donald Trump, que después de lo que me hicieron es hora de ir a atacar a la gente. Yo atacaría al expresidente de Estados Unidos, Barack Obama. Continuamos escuchando esa rueda de prensa con su homólogo filipino.
Many of them, 50%, more than 50%, murdered more than one person. I hate to say this with such a distinguished guest, but, you know, they asked me a question. I got to answer the question. No, Barack Hussein Obama is the ringleader. Hillary Clinton was right there with him, and so was Sleepy Joe Biden, and so were the rest of them. Comey, Clapper, the whole group. And they tried to rig an election, and they got caught. And then they did rig the election in 2020. And then because I knew I won that election by a lot, I did it a third time, and I won in a landslide. Every swing state won the popular vote. But I won that all the same way in 2020. And look at the damage that was caused.
How crucial is the ammunition hub that the U.S. plans to build in Subic and then the zone corridor, considering that these will be built in areas that hosts strategic ports as well as military air bases?
You're talking ammunition?
Yes, the U.S. House Congressional Committee on Appropriations approved the budget.
Well, it's very important. Otherwise, we wouldn't have approved it.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's very important. Otherwise, we wouldn't. We need ammunition. We're going to end up in a few months, we'll have more ammunition than any country has ever had. We're going to have more missiles than any country has ever had. We're going to have all the speedy missiles. We'll have the speedy ones, the slow ones, the accurate ones, the ones that are slightly less accurate. We have everything. But we will have more ammunition than any country has ever had. It's very important to me. Okay. Go ahead, please, Red.
Sir, when you say that you're close to making a trade deal, what gaps remain? And for President Marcos, sir, I was just wondering, do you not think that perhaps the Philippines hosting U.S. missile systems could be considered escalatory by China, especially because they can strike Thitu on China? Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be with this gentleman. You know, I've known him, and I've known his family, actually, but I've known him. And I assume you're from the Philippines? Are you from the Philippines?
Yes, sir.
That's good. You're very lucky to be from the Philippines, right? It's a great place. But we're going to have a very good relationship. I mean, I know you had some problems with another president. And it was not your fault. It was the president's fault. And the country was maybe tilting toward China, but we untilted it very, very quickly. But you had a country that was tilting toward China for a period of time, and I just don't think that would have been good for you. You could deal with China, you should deal with China, but when I got elected, everything changed and they came right back to us. Say it again. Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Oh, Mr. President, I just wanted to piggyback off the
Sorry, I
housing.
have a question to President Marcos.
Yes. Sorry, what was the question again?
It was about whether having U.S. missiles hosted in the Philippines could be considered escalatory by China.
All of what we consider part of the modernization of the Philippine military is really as a response to the circumstances that surround the situation around the South China Sea, and now what we used to refer to as Asia Pacific, which we have expanded now to the Indo-Pacific. And if we would certainly, like in any kind of military spending, we would wish that it wasn't necessary, but it is. And so that is what we are doing. And as an adjunct to the question about the ammunition
Estamos teniendo problemas de conexión con esa rueda de prensa que están ofreciendo el presidente filipino Marcos Ferdinand y el presidente de Estados Unidos Donald Trump. Vuelve esa rueda de prensa, así que volvemos con la conexión.
The situation around the South China Sea, and now what we used to refer to as Asia Pacific, which we have expanded now to the Indo-Pacific. And if we would certainly, like in any kind of military spending, we would wish that it wasn't necessary, but it is. And so that is what we are doing. And as an adjunct to the question about the ammunition
Vuelven esos problemas de conexión durante la intervención del presidente de Filipinas, de Marcos Ferdinand Jr. En directo estaba explicando el equilibrio de poderes en la zona del Indo-Pacífico en clave de relaciones comerciales. Por cierto, que decían tanto el presidente filipino como Donald Trump que el acuerdo entre ambos territorios, entre Estados Unidos y Filipinas, está próximo a cerrarse. También decía Donald Trump que no le importa que Filipinas alcance acuerdos comerciales con China. Y decía en este caso el presidente de Filipinas que no tienen que elegir entre uno y otro porque son un país soberano que en cada momento establece su balanza de equilibrios. De nuevo vamos con esa rueda de prensa.
I believe so, yes.
Mr. President, I wanted to follow up on the housing question.
Yeah.
You got no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. How important is it we have no tax on home sales, capital gains, to unleash the housing market in this country?
Well, we're thinking about that, but would also unleash it just by lowering the interest rates. If the Fed would lower the rates, we wouldn't even have to do that. But we are thinking about no tax on capital gains on houses. And very impressed that you asked that question because nobody knew that.
Well,
how did you find that out? That's very.
I wonder why there's somebody I'm very close.
There's a leaker. There's a leaker.
I've also got a question. I find it a very interesting world that we know more about two people at a Coldplay concert just hours after that viral video than we know of Thomas Crooks 1 year after attempting to assassinate you. What is holding back the investigation on Thomas Crooks?
Well, they've reported to me and they've told me things, and they really say they haven't found anything that was abnormal. I would say this: the Secret Service was very brave because they were right there and they jumped on me. They made a mistake. They should have had somebody on that roof, and they should have had communication with the local police, who also, they did a very good job, but they made some mistakes, and we have a whole different group of people now. I don't think anything can happen, but I think we have the best people anywhere in the world right now, and I think they've learned. And, they went into him very, in great detail. They gave me the whole thing, and what can I do? They say that it was just a nut job that was looking to do this. And I spoke with the FBI, the new FBI. I spoke to the FBI, who was the old FBI. I wouldn't have believed a thing they said because the old FBI under Comey was crooked as hell. He was one of the most crooked. Everybody should read the Horowitz report. Unfortunately, Bill Barr didn't use it. But the Horowitz report, not appointed by me, It was a report on Comey and the FBI. It is one of the worst shots at a human being I think I've ever seen. In fact, the New York Times did an editorial that was one of the worst editorials I've ever seen about anybody. That was about Comey. You had to go back and get, and Barr didn't use it because he didn't have the guts to use it or something happened. I don't know. Too bad. He went to Mr. Durham. Instead of doing the Durham, all they had to use is the Horowitz report. And I always felt badly for Horowitz, frankly, because he's a Democrat, I guess. He was appointed by a Democrat. But that report has gotten lost, and it shouldn't be lost. You should all go back. It should be mandatory reading. Go back and read the Horowitz report on Comey and his cronies. And you'll see exactly, we're going to add that to all the stuff that we found. It just confirms it. But what we found is even more so. And we found absolute, this isn't like evidence, this is like proof, irrefutable proof that Obama was seditious, that Obama was trying to lead a coup and was with Hillary Clinton, with all these other people, but Obama headed it up. And, you know, I get a kick when I hear everyone talks about people I never even heard of. It was this one. No, it was Obama. He headed it up. And it says so right in the papers. Got everything. This is the biggest scandal in the history of our country. And it really goes on to even the auto pen, because it all relates to the same thing. It all started the same sick minds. You have an auto pen, which is a tremendous, well, we don't have a president. We have an auto pen that signs everything. I'll bet you sign everything. You don't have auto pens. Everybody, who doesn't sign? You're the president of a country. But it's all that whole thing leading right up to the end of it is the auto pen. And the auto pen was used by people, and Biden knew nothing about it. They were signing documents that he knew nothing about. As an example, they released the Unselect Committee of Liability. The Unselect Committee spent 2 years grilling everybody, and then they destroyed all the evidence. You know why? Because the evidence made them guilty, and he gave them all a pardon. The Cheney, all the scum that was on the Unselect Committee, Cryan, Adam Kinzinger, and Democrats, and he gave them a pardon. Do you have something else?
I was going to add one more thing on Adam Schiff. Director Quality reports that Adam Schiff claims he lived in a one-bedroom apartment. Now, how does a family of four, and you're a developer, very successful developer, how does a family of four live in a one-bedroom apartment?
Now, it looks like Adam Schiff really did a bad thing. They have him. Now, let's see what happens. It's not up to me. I stay out of it purposely. But it's mortgage loan fraud. It's a big deal. He defrauded banks and insurance companies and the federal government. But it's very simple. It's mortgage loan fraud. And you're right. It's a lot of people to live in a one-bedroom apartment, right? But he put it down. But he has a lot of other things far worse than that. So, no, Adam Schiff, they have him 100% on mortgage fraud. Now, if there's anybody else in this room except you would have no problem. But anybody else in this room, you'd have a problem. I'd have a problem. Yeah, please.
So there was a hearing yesterday in the Harvard case. Would you allow Harvard to get their federal dollars back as a part of any agreement with the administration?
No, I'm not giving. Harvard's been given $7 billion. Can you believe it? By the $7 billion. And we want money to go to all universities, not Harvard. Harvard got more than anybody else. They have $52 billion. They get huge tax incentives and tax breaks on that $52 billion. But they have $52 billion, and they got $7 billion over a short period of time. And we have a very hostile judge appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, a very, very hostile judge who knows exactly right from wrong. But you know, we expect to win it on appeal. She hasn't given a decision yet, but she's very hostile, and she was put by Barack Hussein Obama. And generally speaking, anybody that does that, we're gonna have problems with. So we don't expect to have. We won the case yesterday. Anybody that was there, that was a neutral, would say we easily won the case. But a lot of the case, and a big part of it's going to be how much money Harvard gets in the future. That's not part of the case, and they're not going to get very much.
Where are we
negotiating about the reciprocal tariff. How far are we
With who?
from with the Philippines? Yes, sir. How far
Are you
we
from the Philippines?
Yes, sir. I'm from the Philippines. How far are we from achieving?
Well,
free
it's tough.
trade
He's a very tough negotiator. So far, we're not there because he's negotiating too tough. In fact, I used to like him better than I do now. He's too tough. But we'll probably agree to something. But he's strong, a strong negotiator. He loves your country.
Mr. President,
When are you coming to the Philippines, sir?
you talk a lot about the severe consequences that those who are involved in the Russia hoax must face. In your view, sir, what are the next steps now that these documents are out there?
Well, the Justice Department would have to act. And we have a very competent, very good, very loyal to our country person in Pam Bondi, very respected. And it's going to be her decision.
Just a follow-up to that, sir. Chrissy Noem was in New York City visiting an off-duty CBP officer who was allegedly shot this weekend by an illegal alien who came into the country during the previous administration.
Right.
What is your message to any local leaders who continue to push sanctuary city policies after this nearly tragic incident?
So the only thing I don't understand, because you like to understand things and we're all smart people and all that, why would they allow 21 million people into our country, unvetted, unchecked? You don't allow it. You wouldn't allow people then. He's tough. No, the country's run properly. Biden and his group of thugs, and I don't think it was Biden, I think it was the people that surrounded that beautiful Resolute desk right behind you. They allowed 21 million people, probably much more than that, and many of them came from jails and gangs and drug dealers and mental institutions, insane asylums. Many of them are very sick. 21 million, probably 25 million, probably even more than that. And we're getting them out. Many were murderers, as I said. They killed people. Many killed more than one person. Stone cold murderers. I don't understand why they would have allowed that. There's only two reasons: the vote. Is there one voters? It's one reason. I don't think they would have done it for that because they cheat. You know, they're so good at cheating, they don't need that. But the vote, and the second reason is they hate our country. I think they hate our country. I actually do. And it's the biggest problem. I mean, much of our time is spent with, you know, we have the strongest border anywhere in the world now. Maybe even stronger than your border, if you can believe it. We have no people came in last month, zero, which is pretty amazing. I'm not even sure I can believe that. But liberals are the ones that do that calculation. So, but we had no people come in. A year ago, we had hundreds of thousands of people come in. Hundreds of thousands of people. And they flowed in. And if it wasn't for the election, it would have been millions of people came in last year. So millions of people prior to election time, they allowed millions and millions of people to come into our, I mean, you saw it. They'd open the gates. If you took an Alabama LSU football game that holds 128,000 people, I was there, 128,000 people. And I like them and they liked me. But if you took that and doubled it, that's what used to flow into our country on a daily basis. It's not even believable. And we're getting them out, and we're starting with the worst ones. And we had a man shot yesterday, a police officer who's a great gentleman, shot right here in the throat. Probably won't be able to speak again. But he was brave, and he shot the other guy, and they ended up getting him. And you saw the scene where his friend took him to a hospital and dumped him down on the sidewalk. The whole thing was crazy. But why would anybody do to our country what these Democrats have done? And honestly, we can never forget it. We can never forget it. What they have done, the damage that they've done to America is very, very sad. Thank you very much, everybody.
Hasta aquí ha llegado la comparecencia por parte de Donald Trump, el presidente de Estados Unidos, junto al presidente filipino, hablando de acuerdos comerciales, también poniendo en su punto de mira al expresidente Barack Obama, al que acusa de ser un criminal. Sigue hablando sobre la polémica en torno al caso Epstein y también hablaba sobre las conversaciones de mañana en Estambul entre Rusia y Ucrania. Precisamente sobre esto, sobre Donald Trump, sobre el escándalo Epstein. Vamos a hablar en los próximos minutos. Empezamos el noticiero de Negocios Televisión. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos de nuevo a Negocios Televisión, bienvenidos de nuevo a este espacio de las noticias del día, mirando a las últimas horas pendientes de Donald Trump, el presidente de Estados Unidos, carga contra Barack Obama en un momento en el que se habla de las armas nucleares que va a desplegar en Reino Unido. Enseguida les contamos la respuesta de Rusia, la tensión en Oriente Medio, pero empezamos mirando a Donald Trump, el presidente de Estados Unidos, acusa a Barack Obama de ser un criminal. Lo escuchamos.
Lo sabemos.
It's time to start after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level.
Mientras tanto, el Kremlin ha descartado hoy que se puedan producir avances milagrosos en la tercera ronda de negociaciones con Ucrania, que se va a celebrar este miércoles en Estambul. Eran las palabras, eran precisamente las declaraciones de Dmitry Peskov. Escuchamos a Peskov.
Тема переговоров достаточно сложная. Помимо других вопросов, конечно, надо будет обсуждать те самые проекты меморандумов, которыми обменялись в ходе второго раунда. Поэтому сначала предстоит много поработать перед тем, как уже в предметном плане говорить о возможности каких-то встреч на высоком и высшем уровне. Давайте говорить прямо, тема украинского регулирования настолько сложна, что достижение договоренности об обменах или о возвращении тел погибших, это уже результативно.
Decía Peskov, por supuesto, no hay ningún motivo para esperar alguna clase de avance milagroso, dada la actual situación. Esto es difícilmente posible, es lo que apuntaba el portavoz presidencial en su rueda de prensa telefónica diaria. También les contamos que la presidencia turca ha confirmado que Ucrania y Rusia van a celebrar mañana miércoles una tercera ronda de negociaciones de paz en Estambul. La reunión de ambos países tendrá lugar en el Palacio Otomano de Shiragan, en Besiktas, donde ya se celebró la última ronda de conversaciones el pasado 3 de junio. La presidencia turca ha confirmado la reunión, la tercera desde que Moscú y Kiev retomaran en mayo contactos directos en Estambul, enviando a la prensa un breve comunicado en el que especifica el lugar y la hora del encuentro. Ucrania confirmó ayer que la cita se preveía para el miércoles, mientras que Moscú también corroboró de forma implícita su disposición de acudir a la misma. Decía que Estambul es un lugar aceptable. Mientras tanto, les contamos que el presidente ucraniano Volodymyr Zelensky ha declarado que Rusia y Ucrania mantendrán nuevas conversaciones este miércoles en Turquía con miras a poner fin a más de 3 años de guerra, a pesar de posiciones diametralmente opuestas de ambos países. Este anuncio se produce tras una nueva noche de bombardeos rusos en Ucrania que dejaron al menos un fallecido y 9 heridos en Kiev. Esto es lo que decía Zelensky.
Сьогодні я обговорив з Рустемом Умєровим підготовку обміну та ще однієї зустрічі в Туреччині з російською стороною. Умєров доповів, що зустріч планується на середу. Завтра буде більше деталей.
Mientras tanto, miramos también a los nuevos planes, las nuevas jugadas de Rusia que desatan las alarmas en Ucrania. La producción de drones rusos se ha expandido tanto que en unos meses podría ser posible lanzar hasta 2.000 de estos dispositivos en una sola noche, es lo que apuntan varios informes. Moscú disparó otra andanada de drones y misiles contra ciudades ucranianas la noche de este lunes. La Fuerza Aérea Ucraniana informó que Moscú lanzó al menos 450 drones y misiles contra Kiev y varias ciudades ucranianas. Funcionarios ucranianos y alemanes han dado la alarma de que la producción de drones, la producción rusa de drones tipo Shahid, ha crecido hasta el punto que paquetes de ataque 4 veces mayores podrían ser posibles para noviembre. Rusia prepara ataques con hasta 2.000 drones contra Ucrania. Precisamente en Rusia, el secretario de prensa del Kremlin, Dmitry Peskov, decía este martes que Moscú está notando una tendencia en Occidente hacia la militarización, incluida la nuclear. Dice que está monitoreando esta situación para garantizar la seguridad de Rusia. Decía, observamos una tendencia al aumento de las tensiones, incluida la nuclear. Nuestras agencias competentes están monitoreando los acontecimientos en este ámbito y formulando tareas para garantizar la seguridad a la luz de lo que está sucediendo. Añadía que actualmente no hay fundamento para celebrar una cumbre de los 5 nucleares, es decir, Rusia, China, Francia, Reino Unido y Estados Unidos.
Мы видим линию на эскалацию напряженности, на милитаризацию, в том числе и на ядерную. Наши соответствующие ведомства отслеживают развитие событий в этой области и формулируют задачи для обеспечения нашей безопасности на фоне происходящего.
Comentarios de Peskov que siguen a los informes de que se están desplegando armas nucleares de Estados Unidos en territorio británico por primera vez en más de una década. El UK Defense Journal informaba que varias bombas de gravedad termonucleares B-61-12 habían sido transferidas a una estación de la Royal Air Force de Reino Unido cerca del pueblo de Lakenheath, en Suffolk, es decir, en Reino Unido. Mientras tanto, el Kremlin todavía espera reanimar las relaciones bilaterales a pesar de admitir este martes fuertes discrepancias con Azerbaiyán sobre Ucrania, después de que su presidente Ilham Aliyev llamara a Kiev a no resignarse a la ocupación de sus territorios por parte de Rusia. Decía además que estos desacuerdos esperaban que no impidan superar este breve periodo de enfriamiento de las relaciones bilaterales y no sacrificar los intereses mutuos a causa de la situación actual. Es lo que apuntaba Dmitry Peskov en su rueda de prensa telefónica. La postura de Azerbaiyán no sorprendió totalmente a Moscú, quien alega que Aliyev mantiene esta opinión desde el comienzo de la guerra de Ucrania. Mientras tanto, les contamos que el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores ruso anunciaba este martes en un comunicado que ha ampliado significativamente la lista de funcionarios europeos a los que se les prohíbe entrar a Rusia en respuesta a los paquetes de sanciones 17º y 18º de la Unión Europea. Dice que se trata de empleados de organismos policiales, organizaciones estatales y comerciales, ciudadanos de los Estados miembros de la Unión Europea y de varios otros estados occidentales responsables de proporcionar ayuda militar a Kiev y que participan en la organización del suministro de productos de doble uso a Ucrania. Moscú reiteraba que estas acciones antirrusas de la Unión Europea recibirán una respuesta oportuna y adecuada. El ministro de Defensa de Ucrania, Denis Shmyhal, decía este martes que Kiev va a necesitar una financiación de al menos 120.000 millones de dólares para el próximo año. Decía, estamos trabajando con otros países para atraer la mitad de esta cantidad con el apoyo de nuestros aliados. Ya estamos llevando a cabo negociaciones sustanciales con miembros de la Unión Europea y de la OTAN. En este sentido, apuntaba el propio Denis Shmyhal en su cuenta de Telegram después de reunirse con los jefes de misiones diplomáticas extranjeras. También solicitaba financiación adicional para el desarrollo de la industria ucraniana en la producción de drones FPV, interceptores y drones de largo alcance. Decía, proponemos que los aliados creen empresas conjuntas, transfieran licencias y abran instalaciones de producción en los países socios. Añadía que estos productos ayudarán al ejército ucraniano durante la guerra y a largo plazo también fortalecerán a sus socios. Precisamente mirando a Zelensky, les contamos que hay dos asuntos ajenos al frente que han dominado la agenda informativa en los últimos días en Ucrania. La remodelación gubernamental ordenada por Zelensky y una serie de acciones de la Fiscalía y los servicios secretos contra actores percibidos como incómodos para el poder, que han eclipsado las rotaciones entre ministerios y le han valido al líder ucraniano acusaciones sin precedentes de autoritarismo. Mientras Zelensky encargaba este lunes a sus diplomáticos y al nuevo ministro de Defensa, el ex primer ministro Denis Shmyhal, que intensifique la actividad para reforzar las relaciones internacionales y la efectividad de la cooperación militar con sus socios. El Servicio Secreto de Ucrania efectuaba decenas de redadas contra empleados de la Oficina Nacional Anticorrupción. El objetivo declarado de esta macrooperación, en la que fueron detenidos 2 altos funcionarios, era acabar con la influencia rusa dentro de esta agencia creada hace más de una década para limpiar el sistema y convencer a los socios occidentales de la seriedad de Kiev. Dentro de los socios de Zelensky, vamos a mirar al ministro de Defensa alemán, Boris Pistorius. Decía este martes que Berlín precisa, en un plazo máximo de 8 meses, de un reemplazo de Estados Unidos de los sistemas de defensa Patriot que Alemania quiere enviar a Ucrania en un mecanismo de ayuda a Kiev en el que además de su país va a participar Noruega y otro aliado, decía Pistorius. Yo he dicho que podemos dar 2 de nuestros sistemas, pero no sin la seguridad de que tengamos un reemplazo en, digamos, de 6 a 8 meses, es lo que afirmaba Pistorius en declaraciones a la prensa en el marco de su visita al Laboratorio de Innovación Militar e Instituto Científico de Defensa para Materiales y Combustibles de Erding, en el sur de Alemania. Según explicaba, ese plazo ha de cumplirse, porque de lo contrario Alemania quedaría todavía más lejos de sus objetivos de defensa y perdería capacidad de formación en el uso de esos sistemas.
Es gibt eine generelle Zusage der amerikanischen Regierung, Patriot-Systeme an uns, an Deutschland abzugeben und an die Europäische Union und dass wir dann von uns aus die vorhandenen Patriot-Systeme an die Ukraine liefern. Also wir liefern und wir bekommen Ersatz. Aber dieser Ersatz ist noch nicht tatsächlich beschafft. Es gibt zurzeit mit der amerikanischen Regierung Diskussionen darüber, woher der Ersatz kommen soll. Aber die grundsätzliche Zusage der amerikanischen Regierung, dass wir den Ersatz bekommen, ist gegeben. Es müssen jetzt noch die Details zwischen den Verteidigungsministern ausverhandelt werden.
También les contamos que según informes, Estados Unidos ha desplegado armas nucleares en Gran Bretaña por primera vez en más de 15 años, es lo que informa hoy el diario The Telegraph. Un avión transporte estadounidense, C-17, visitó recientemente la base aérea de Lakenheath de la RAF, posiblemente transportando bombas desde la base aérea Kirtland en Nuevo México. Esta misión se alinea con operaciones previas de la USAF para el lanzamiento de armas nucleares. Los analistas señalaban que el espacio aéreo restringido y el comportamiento de vuelo de este C-17 indicaban una caída unilateral. Reino Unido también está dispuesto a adquirir aviones F-35A capaces de desplegar bombas nucleares de gravedad de un arsenal estadounidense en Gran Bretaña. Este desarrollo forma parte de la respuesta de la OTAN al conflicto en Ucrania. El Ministerio de Defensa británico ha confirmado el restablecimiento de la capacidad para el lanzamiento aéreo de armas nucleares. Mientras tanto, Francia considera abandonar el programa Eurodrone de 7.100 millones de euros debido a los largos retrasos, el aumento de los costes y las preocupaciones sobre el diseño. Ahora se esperan las primeras entregas para 2031, es decir, 6 años después. Los funcionarios franceses consideran que el dron es sobredimensionado, vulnerable y posiblemente obsoleto para cuando entre en servicio. París está buscando una salida coordinada con Alemania, España e Italia para evitar dañar la industria de defensa de Europa. Francia también está explorando alternativas como el dron doméstico Aro, que puede ser más barato, más ágil y estar disponible antes. En Polonia les contamos que el ministro de Defensa, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, ha informado este martes de la muerte del comandante retirado de las fuerzas terrestres de Polonia, el general Waldemar Szczypal. Dice que es una gran pérdida para sus seres queridos y para su familia militar, profesionalidad, dedicación a la patria y patriotismo. Estas son las palabras que nos vienen a la mente cuando recordamos al general. Es lo que apuntaba en sus redes sociales. En repetidas ocasiones se ha convertido en tema de discusiones debido a sus declaraciones sobre Kaliningrado. En 2022, tras el inicio del conflicto en Ucrania, afirmaba que el enclave está ocupado por Rusia y que su país debería reclamar sus derechos sobre la región. Decía, quizás valga la pena reclamar la región de Kaliningrado, que en mi opinión forma parte del territorio polaco. Tenemos derecho a reclamar este territorio que Rusia ocupa, es lo que decía hace apenas unos años. El Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores polaco, que ha recomendado a los ciudadanos de la República que abandonen el territorio de la Federación Rusa. Decía, recomendamos a los ciudadanos polacos que residen en Rusia que abandonen su territorio, a menos que su situación personal, familiar o laboral les obligue a permanecer en el país. Es lo que apuntaba el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores en un comunicado publicado en su sitio web. Además, la agencia diplomática advertía a los polacos con pasaporte ruso que en Rusia se les considera ciudadanos rusos con todas las circunstancias que se detallan a continuación. El 18 de julio, el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores llamó a los ciudadanos polacos a no viajar a la Federación Rusa, citando como razones la presencia de Varsovia en la lista de países hostiles y la reducción del personal consular. El despliegue de nuevos misiles por parte de Estados Unidos ha vuelto a encender las alertas en Moscú. La creciente modernización del arsenal norteamericano, que ya es considerado uno de los más potentes del planeta, despierta inquietud en Rusia y reaviva los temores sobre un eventual conflicto global de gran escala. El ejército de Estados Unidos informó que recientemente adquirió los nuevos sistemas de cohetes de artillería de alta movilidad para las divisiones del Océano Indo-Pacífico. La división de infantería número 25 recibió el primer pelotón de los misiles. Serán adquiridos más elementos. Serán 16 los lanzadores a distancia de tipo MRLS. Formarán parte de un proceso de renovación de todo el sistema de defensa. Esto forma parte de la iniciativa de transformación del ejército, la cual tiene como fin brindarle una mayor movilidad y letalidad en diferentes tipos de terrenos a la Armada estadounidense. Del mismo modo, Estados Unidos informó que los nuevos misiles de largo alcance se van a ubicar en la zona del Océano Indo-Pacífico, en la región de la costa oeste, para controlar la región marítima de posibles estados enemigos. También les contamos que la administración Trump busca nuevos socios para el sistema de defensa antimisiles Golden Dome, alejándose de SpaceX debido a las tensiones con Elon Musk. Este cambio se produce tras un desacuerdo público el pasado 5 de junio y el deseo de reducir la dependencia de un solo socio para este proyecto de 175.000 millones. El Pentágono está cortejando al proyecto Kuiper de Amazon, también a contratistas de defensa que reconocen la necesidad de una mayor producción de satélites. Si bien SpaceX sigue siendo uno de los principales candidatos para contratos de lanzamiento, nuevos contendientes como Stock Space y Rocket Lab podrían presentar ofertas para proyectos futuros. La cúpula dorada busca una amplia cobertura satelital similar a la cúpula de hierro de Israel. Invita a pequeñas empresas tecnológicas a participar en la defensa nacional. Las preocupaciones de seguridad surgen debido a que plataformas comerciales como Kuiper requieren protección contra ciberamenazas. Una cúpula dorada exitosa podría alterar la dinámica de la seguridad global. La administración Trump ha solicitado reunirse con Ghislaine Maxwell para discutir el caso de Jeffrey Epstein. Todd Blanche, fiscal general adjunto de Estados Unidos, dijo que el Departamento de Justicia y el FBI se habían puesto en contacto con la socialité británica y exnovia del financiero Jeffrey Epstein, quien actualmente cumple una condena de 20 años tras ser declarado culpable. En una publicación compartida por Pam Bondi, la fiscal general de Estados Unidos decía que el señor Blanche declaró que el presidente Trump les ha pedido que publiquen todas las pruebas creíbles. Dice que si Ghislaine Maxwell tiene información sobre alguien que haya cometido delitos contra las víctimas, el FBI y el Departamento de Justicia escucharán su declaración. Precisamente en Estados Unidos, los republicanos de la Cámara de Representantes paralizaron la actividad legislativa, cerrando abruptamente el pleno de la Cámara para bloquear una votación planificada sobre la publicación de los archivos de Jeffrey Epstein. Esto ocurre después de que los demócratas dijeran que planeaban realizar una votación para llevar al pleno una legislación que obligaría a la publicación de los archivos de Epstein. La decisión del Partido Republicano de suspender el pleno de la Cámara para evitar una votación sobre esta legislación relacionada con Epstein pone de relieve la creciente tensión política en torno a la transparencia y la rendición de cuentas en uno de los casos penales más infames de los últimos tiempos. Mientras la Cámara entra en receso sin resolver este asunto, aumenta la presión tanto de los demócratas como de los republicanos disidentes para forzar esta acción, lo que podría generar un enfrentamiento en los próximos meses. Republicanos de la Cámara de Representantes suspendieron abruptamente una reunión clave del Comité de Reglas este lunes por la noche, deteniendo efectivamente la actividad legislativa de la semana y bloqueando una votación planeada por los demócratas para publicar materiales relacionados con Epstein. El presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, ha decidido retirar a su país de la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Educación, la Ciencia y la Cultura, es decir, la UNESCO, debido a las inclinaciones antiamericanas y anti-israelíes de la organización. Es lo que informa este martes el New York Post, citando a la portavoz adjunta de la Casa Blanca, Anna Kelly. El presidente Trump ha decidido retirar a Estados Unidos de la UNESCO, que apoya causas culturales y sociales progresistas y divisivas que contradicen totalmente las políticas de sentido común que los estadounidenses aprobaron en noviembre. Es lo que apuntaba Kelly al New York Post. Estados Unidos fue aceptado de nuevo en esta organización en 2023, después de que Trump lo retirara de la UNESCO por primera vez en 2017, alegando el persistente sesgo anti-israelí de la organización. Tanto Estados Unidos como Israel finalizaron su membresía a finales de 2018. Un Donald Trump que también decía que atacaría nuevamente instalaciones nucleares iraníes si fuera necesario, reiterando su advertencia a Teherán de que debería abandonar sus ambiciones de seguir enriqueciendo uranio. Trump tomó nota de los comentarios hechos por el ministro de Asuntos Exteriores iraní, Abbas Araghchi, en una entrevista con Fox News, en la que el diplomático describía la gravedad de los daños causados por los ataques estadounidenses a las principales instalaciones nucleares de su país. Araghchi dijo que las instalaciones de enriquecimiento habían sido destruidas, decía Trump. Claro que sí, tal como dije, y lo haremos de nuevo si fuera necesario, es lo que apuntaba en un mensaje en Truth Social, criticando la cobertura mediática que había cuestionado la magnitud del daño infligido. También les contamos que el director ejecutivo de Tesla, Elon Musk, anunciaba este lunes la apertura al público de su primer restaurante Tesla Dinner en Los Ángeles, en California. El establecimiento, que opera a las 24 horas del día, combina el estilo retro estadounidense con un toque de tecnología futurista, incluyendo un robot que sirve palomitas y la opción de ordenar desde la pantalla del vehículo Tesla para los clientes que lleguen en uno de ellos. El menú ofrece hamburguesas, hot dogs, papas a la francesa, sándwiches, tacos, refrescos, postres y algunas opciones vegetarianas, pero no incluye bebidas alcohólicas. Con capacidad para más de 250 personas, Tesla Dinner cuenta con pantallas de entretenimiento, productos con el logo de la compañía y estaciones de carga para autos eléctricos. El establecimiento no acepta ni reservas ni tampoco pagos en efectivo. Musk compartió algunas fotografías de este local en X. Aseguró que si el restaurante resulta bien, abrirá más sucursales en otras ciudades importantes del mundo. El jefe del Estado Mayor de las Fuerzas de Defensa israelíes, Eyal Zamir, declaraba que el ejército de su país tiene que estar preparado para continuar una campaña amplia e integral mientras opera en varias arenas, señalando que el trabajo de las FDI no ha terminado en Irán. Es lo que apunta el comunicado de prensa militar publicado este martes. Dice que las fuerzas de defensa israelíes deben operar ofensivamente en diversas áreas, además de la defensa esencial en las áreas y en las fronteras. Decía, seguiremos manteniendo la superioridad aérea y continuaremos con el esfuerzo de inteligencia, es lo que apuntaba en una evaluación estratégica en la situación celebrada ayer. Dice que Irán y su eje siguen en la mira. La campaña contra Irán no ha terminado. Zamir subrayó que las FDI debilitarán y evitarán las capacidades estratégicas de Siria y Hezbollah mientras continúan su lucha en la franja de Gaza, a pesar de pagar altos precios en los combates. Pendientes de las últimas horas, mirando a las declaraciones por parte de Donald Trump, mirando también, como siempre, al mejor análisis geopolítico. Una pausa y enseguida toda la información con Enrique Castilla.
¿Qué cuento quieres hoy? ¿Te cuento uno de los míos? ¿El del farmacéutico? ¿O el de María, la abogada?
El de Ana, la arquitecta.
Vale. Eras una niña que soñaba con crear los edificios más impresionantes de la Tierra. Se pasaba el día dibujándolos. Sabía que algún día acabarían llegando a lo más alto de cada ciudad. Y que cualquier persona...
Cada profesional tiene detrás una historia increíble. Creer en ella es lo que de verdad cuenta. Arquia Banca, el banco de los profesionales.
¿Te preocupa que tu inquilino no pague el alquiler? Sabemos que esto puede ser un desafío. Aunque los gastos son fáciles de calcular, el verdadero reto es gestionar la falta de pago por parte del inquilino. SEAC te ofrece una garantía de renta asegurada hasta que recuperes tu vivienda, pase el tiempo que pase. Relájate. SEAC se encarga de todo. Alquila tranquilo. SEAC responde.
Silver Gold Patrimonio nace en 2018 con el objetivo de innovar en el mercado de los metales preciosos de inversión, ofreciendo nuevas alternativas para que cualquier persona, familia o empresa pueda entrar en el fantástico mundo de los metales de inversión de forma sencilla y acompañada por consultores expertos en el sector. Silver Gold Patrimonio quiere avanzar contigo.
Muy buenas tardes, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos de nuevo al noticiero. Vamos a contar con un analista en breves momentos para analizar todo lo que está aconteciendo en el día de hoy, en este martes, día 22 de julio, en el que acaban de escuchar hace breves minutos a Donald Trump, el presidente de los Estados Unidos, hablar sobre varios aspectos, sobre una posible reunión con Xi Jinping, con el presidente de China. También ha hablado sobre Powell, el presidente de la Fed, decía que podía salir dentro de 8 meses. Y también apuntaba a Obama, decía que todo lo que se había hecho, que esos papeles que estaban clasificados, bueno, pues su gobierno, el gobierno de Donald Trump, ha sacado a la luz esos papeles que estaban metidos en un cajón y dice que todo lo que cometió, todos los actos que cometió Obama pertenecen a una organización, decía, como criminal. Decía el presidente de los Estados Unidos, decía que era un criminal por todo lo que había firmado en ese papel en el año 2016 y después, en 2020, hizo lo mismo Biden. Por lo tanto, un Donald Trump que señala a los demócratas y señala sobre todo al presidente Barack Obama. Bueno, pues de esto y varios aspectos que están aconteciendo de los conflictos de Rusia y Ucrania y también de Oriente Medio y cómo se está quedando todo el tablero de la geopolítica actual, tenemos el placer de hablar en el día de hoy en Negocios Televisión con don Armando Jiménez, profesor de Relaciones Internacionales en la Universidad Francisco de Vitoria. Don Armando, muy buenas tardes, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo se encuentra?
Muy buenas tardes, buenos días, estamos ahorita desde México, encantado de estar contigo como siempre.
El placer, como siempre, es mío y de esta casa de Negocios Televisión de tenerle. Me gustaría, lo primero de todo, don Armando, preguntarle por lo que escuchábamos de Donald Trump. Es verdad que se está viendo en las últimas semanas un poco salpicado, por así decirlo, por el tema del caso de Jeffrey Epstein. También ahora Donald Trump, que busca de nuevo arremeter contra los demócratas, señalando a Barack Obama, diciendo que, bueno, que se cometieron muchas cosas ilegales durante el mandato del presidente demócrata estadounidense. Y no sé si le quería preguntar si cree que le pueden desgastar estas luchas internas de su país, internas en Estados Unidos, a Donald Trump, de cara a la vista de cómo lo ven el resto de países geopolíticos, me refiero. No sé si les puede desgastar esto que le está ocurriendo y estas luchas internas que está teniendo, o cree que simplemente quedará en agua de borraja, como se dice aquí en España.
Bueno, yo creo que son tiempos complejos. Obviamente había estado en una situación muy difícil el presidente Trump con este reavivamiento del tema de Epstein, con grupos solidarios a él, grupos que estaban en el Partido Republicano demandando más transparencia y más conocimiento sobre esas famosas listas de actividades, y esto le estaba mermando mucho en su popularidad doméstica en los Estados Unidos. Recordemos que Donald Trump se crece en las controversias, siempre busca también responder con contundencia y fuerza, y ha enfocado ahora su lucha interna precisamente contra el Partido Demócrata, con su filosofía y con las acciones muy en particular realizadas durante la administración Obama. Creo que esto ya está dando sus primeros resultados porque ha generado obviamente una serie de noticias a nivel internacional y hay expectativas de a qué se refiere con esta ofensiva y estas prácticas que ha considerado casi de crimen organizado o mafiosas. Entonces, se abre un nuevo capítulo en la política norteamericana donde vamos a estar viendo versiones encontradas de un lado y del otro, previo a lo que el próximo año será pues un ambiente electoral candente. Entonces, estamos con el típico Donald Trump que no se deja y está haciendo una respuesta dura contra el Partido Demócrata, a quien acusa de estar detrás de estas especulaciones.
Bueno, pues aparte del tema de Donald Trump, que volveremos a hablar, eso sí, me gustaría preguntarle por el tema del conflicto de Ucrania-Rusia. Mañana se prevé una posible reunión en Turquía, es lo que decían los ucranianos. No sé si de esa reunión se espera que se salga algo positivo, porque en el día de hoy escuchábamos a Peskov decir precisamente que es muy complicado el que salga algo positivo, que ya es algo muy a tener en cuenta que se intercambien cuerpos de soldados o de hombres y de personas heridas, fallecidas, como que para llegar a un acuerdo de alto al fuego o incluso a una reunión a un acuerdo para que haya una reunión entre los líderes, que eso lo ve algo muy lejano. No sé usted cómo lo analiza.
Pues sí, efectivamente. Primero hay que destacar que es un paso hacia adelante, que es un avance muy importante, que se mantenga todavía el diálogo, que se esté discutiendo, que haya este sentido humanitario al que también ha apelado mucho el presidente Trump, tanto en los muertos como en aquellos heridos, estos intercambios que precisamente en estas fechas, durante el verano, en Europa se recrudecen y hay desafortunadamente muchas bajas, tanto civiles como militares. Entonces, esto es un avance significativo. Pero también han puesto el énfasis de que no podemos esperar de esta reunión que se va a llevar en Estambul resultados importantes como poder prometer un cese al fuego. Hemos visto que en la retórica de Estados Unidos está la posición del presidente Trump más amistosa, conciliadora, ha venido cambiando con un tono inclusive amenazante. A Trump le urge sacar este tema durante el verano para concentrarse en otros, principalmente en las negociaciones con China, mientras que al presidente Putin le favorece y le conviene que este proceso se alargue, sobre todo durante el verano y el principio del otoño, que es el tiempo donde las capacidades militares rusas le permiten consolidarse en el territorio ucraniano, expander sus posiciones y consolidar otras. Entonces vamos a ver este cambio de retórica, uno y otro lado presionando para que se dé este alto al fuego, uno prometiendo que está interesado en buscar soluciones pacíficas, pero alargándolas, y otro que es los Estados Unidos demandando que se haga a la brevedad posible. Entonces, es una guerra de retórica que vamos a ver ahí presente, y bueno, celebro la posición de Turquía y su insistencia por mantener abierto también el diálogo y la negociación, aunque es cierto que no esperaremos grandes avances en los próximos días.
Me gustaría, don Armando, preguntarle también por qué papel está jugando la diplomacia internacional en dicho conflicto, en el conflicto de Ucrania y Rusia, y sobre todo qué actores están presionando realmente por una solución política, porque si es que vemos de verdad a Estados Unidos que intenta llevar el peso de que ambas partes, de que Ucrania y Rusia lleguen a un acuerdo, pero es que después también Estados Unidos vemos que en un momento Trump se posiciona a favor de Rusia, partidaria de Rusia, y otro momento también partidaria de Ucrania, lo que también despista un poco a las dos partes principales del conflicto.
Efectivamente, a veces pareciera haber información contradictoria y posiciones contradictorias en este tema. Lo que debemos destacar es que el presidente Trump ha buscado soluciones en términos geoeconómicos, tanto con Ucrania pidiendo las reservas de estas tierras raras, los ductos de gas y de petróleo que vienen de Rusia, la imposición de sanciones, que acaban de poner unas nuevas sanciones al Reino Unido, el Reino Unido y Francia a Rusia, y la Unión Europea se ha sumado a ellas, la expropiación de bienes y la compra de equipamiento militar en estos dos países, principalmente en el Reino Unido, precisamente con bienes congelados rusos, y la retórica que había entre la Unión Europea y Estados Unidos ha cambiado. Ha cambiado porque la Unión Europea, vamos a destacarlo, ha tenido una posición más beligerante, una posición de rearmamento nuclear, de una posición de rearmamento militar, de incrementar sus capacidades militares en toda la región, de ubicar y posiblemente enviar tropas a la zona de conflicto, lo que sin lugar a duda ha tensado mucho la relación con Rusia. Y a esta posición, que antes estaba el presidente Trump muy alejado y con una posición contraria a esta, cada vez se ha ido sumando poco a poco por la diplomacia europea y la presión que ha ejercido por no ver resultados en las negociaciones diplomáticas que han estado llevando a cabo los Estados Unidos. Entonces, como vemos, son equilibrios muy frágiles, muy complejos, que cambian según van cambiando las circunstancias. Pero no podemos olvidar que a ambos, tanto a Rusia como a la Unión Europea, les urge llegar también a puntos de acuerdo y a un alto al fuego, que esto no se escale en tensiones que puedan ser nucleares y sobre todo que una guerra prolongada cuesta muchísimo dinero y muchas vidas humanas.
Me gustaría también preguntarle, don Armando, porque en el día de hoy Peskov decía que Moscú también ha respondido con preocupación al tema del despliegue de armas nucleares en Europa, que se conocían a lo largo de estas semanas, y le decía que Peskov aseguraba que vigila Rusia militarización nuclear en Occidente que se está dando. Por lo tanto, ¿estamos más cerca de una escalada nuclear o se trata de una retórica simplemente defensiva que está realizando tanto Rusia como también los países europeos?
No, esta amenaza es muy cierta y hay que tomarla muy en serio. El rearmamento nuclear en Europa, el reposicionamiento de ojivas nucleares, ya sean de carácter defensivo, es un tema que cercano a la frontera con Rusia, es un tema muy, muy delicado. Esto lo ha venido expresando ya en las últimas 2 décadas Rusia, y es un tema que sí podría escalar de alguna manera el conflicto. Entonces, esperemos que esta reubicación de fuerzas sea más bien táctica, se enfoque solamente en la movilización de capacidades y no necesariamente de ojivas nucleares, porque esto sí podría escalar el conflicto a otro nivel con mucha rapidez.
Preguntarle también cuánto margen real cree usted que tiene la OTAN para actuar sin provocar una respuesta directa de Rusia. Ahí me podría dar un porcentaje, no sabemos qué papel podría desempeñar también la OTAN, claro.
Eso es muy difícil de predecir y dar un porcentaje, porque la OTAN ha ido cada vez cruzando esas líneas rojas que Rusia había considerado como que no eran negociables. Y ha tenido éxito en este sentido, pero ha generado también un ambiente de muchísima tensión y la posibilidad de una escalada militar muy rápida cuando simplemente Europa no está preparado para ello. Inclusive ha generado este quiebre en la alianza Estados Unidos-Europa, que parece que está nuevamente reforzando y revitalizando por la postura del presidente Trump, pero que hace 3 meses o 2 meses y medio se veía muy tensionada la cuerda entre las relaciones entre Estados Unidos y los países que conforman la OTAN en Europa.
Cambiando un poquito de tercio, don Armando, preguntarle por una de las noticias que conocíamos a lo largo del día de hoy, que se confirmaba por la tarde, mediodía aquí en España, y era que Estados Unidos ha anunciado su salida de la UNESCO para finales del año 2026. Me gustaría preguntarle que qué lectura geopolítica puede hacer usted de este paso atrás en el multilateralismo por parte de Estados Unidos.
Bueno, como tú bien lo comentas, es un claro reflejo de la postura que tiene ahora el gobierno norteamericano de salirse de muchos de los organismos multilaterales, entre ellos el Organismo Mundial de la Salud, ahora lo estamos viendo con UNESCO, el corte total de presupuesto para la Agencia de Cooperación Norteamericana, USAID, y que lo que muestran es que no están buscando los canales tradicionales de negociación entre los países a través de estos organismos multilaterales. Lo justifican por un debate interno que es la promoción de una agenda progresista de corte izquierdista que había permeado en todas estas instituciones y que era financiada precisamente por el gobierno norteamericano y que al final perjudicaba tanto el posicionamiento y la imagen de los Estados Unidos como agresiones directas contra el pueblo israelita. Entonces, es un cambio de timón, es un golpe fuerte hacia la dirección de las políticas internacionales de los Estados Unidos, pero que muestran este descontento con la función y la operación de los organismos internacionales.
Quería también preguntarle por el tema de, porque nos quedamos sin tiempo, me gustaría preguntarle por el conflicto de Oriente Medio, preguntarle, Israel ha afirmado en el día de hoy también que la campaña contra Irán no ha terminado, por lo que, a diferencia de lo que muchas personas pueden creer. ¿Qué escenario prevé usted si Israel continúa su ofensiva directa? ¿Puede desatarse un conflicto regional aún más abierto o cree que no?
Yo le veo pocas posibilidades. El presidente Trump ha logrado controlar esta ofensiva israelita. Ellos quieren aprovechar una coyuntura. Ustedes mismos lo comentaban hace unos momentos. Salió una persona de alto nivel del gobierno iraní para reconocer los daños causados al sistema de producción o enriquecimiento de uranio. Y hay una tensa calma entre estas dos figuras que podría escalar a un conflicto mayor en toda la región, pero aquí sí, gracias a la intervención norteamericana, ha estado controlado. La retórica de amenaza de uno y otro lado está ahí, seguirá ahí, es parte de la guerra de palabras que hemos vivido en los últimos 70 años, pero en los hechos reales hay una estabilidad, una paz en la región, aunque no se excluye la posibilidad de una nueva escalada, como ha sucedido en otras ocasiones, las posibilidades siguen siendo muy bajas.
Me gustaría también preguntarle por el tema de Gaza, la ONU y la posición de Europa, que hay mucho que analizar ahí, mucha tela que cortar, porque la ONU ha confirmado hoy también un riesgo de extremadamente alto de violaciones en Gaza. ¿Se está vulnerando los principios de derecho internacional humanitario con impunidad, con mucha impunidad en todo este tiempo en la Franja de Gaza?
Parece ser que sí. Vamos a esperar que esto se acredita. Los organismos internacionales, las Naciones Unidas lo hagan. Ha habido abuso en el uso de la fuerza, sobre todo en los campamentos de refugiados, a la hora de ir a solicitar comida, en abusos bueno, también se han dado de uno y de otro lado, pero obviamente hay señalamientos muy importantes hacia la milicia israelí. Vamos a buscar las evidencias y qué bueno que las Naciones Unidas están levantando este tema, que la Unión Europea, con su tradición de defensa de los derechos humanos, lo ha puesto en el centro del debate y que como sociedad avanzada, civilizadas, no debemos de permitir que los conflictos militares lleguen a esos niveles de falta de humanidad y de ataque directo a la población civil. Entonces, esperemos ver los resultados de las premisas y seguiremos apoyando esta posición de vigilancia o ultravigilancia para que estos temas no se den. También a veces hay el riesgo de caer en propaganda de un lado o de otro, que se utiliza también maximizando algunos hechos. Pero parece ser que sí hay temas sensibles que necesitan ser estudiados, abordados y en su momento sancionados por los organismos multilaterales.
Don Armando, la Unión Europea ha instado a Israel también en las últimas horas, a cumplir sus compromisos. ¿Cree que hay una falta de coherencia entre las declaraciones políticas y las acciones reales por parte de Bruselas?
No, yo creo que ha habido cada vez más presión hacia Israel, ha habido acondicionamientos en cuanto al uso y venta de material de material armamentístico, y considero que sí ha habido congruencia, falta tal vez un poco más de consistencia en esas acciones, pero esto lo vamos viendo en las próximas semanas y meses conforme la información se vaya integrando.
Don Armando, para ir terminando, le quiero hacer una última pregunta y ya un poquito más global, y es preguntarle, profesor, estamos en un momento convulso, muy convulso a nivel internacional, lo estamos viendo en estos últimos meses, en estos últimos años, por lo tanto, preguntarle, ¿cómo describiría usted el panorama geopolítico global actual? ¿Diría que estamos ante una nueva guerra fría? ¿O el escenario actual supera incluso a las tensiones que había de la segunda mitad del siglo XX para adelante?
No, estamos muy lejos de las verdaderas tensiones que hubo en la Guerra Fría. Lo que sí estamos viendo es un cambio de paradigma, una redefinición del poder y de las zonas de influencia de los diferentes actores. Estamos viviendo una época de tensión y conflicto con mucha incertidumbre, pero también de apertura al diálogo y la negociación, y creo que no es siquiera comparable con las tensiones que vivimos en los 80s y la amenaza de algunas de las superpotencias de apretar ese botón rojo. Inclusive la relación entre estas superpotencias y las nuevas potencias emergentes sigue siendo en términos generales basada en la diplomacia y el diálogo, y aunque hay estos conflictos regionales que están vinculados a el tema de protección territorial, el caso de Ucrania muy concreto, y de Rusia como una amenaza por la extensión de la OTAN, representan un problema que no llega a la escala de lo que vivimos en los 80s y principios de los 90s.
Don Armando, pues como siempre, me quedo sin tiempo, pero es un placer tenerle aquí en Negocios Televisión. Le agradezco su presencia en esta casa.
Al revés, el placer, como siempre, es mío. Encantado.
Que vaya bien la tarde. Bueno, pues seguimos pendientes de todo lo que acontece y de una última hora que pasa y que ustedes van a poder ver ahora mismo porque está teniendo lugar el discurso de la vicepresidenta de Supervisión, Michelle Bowman, en la conferencia sobre la revisión integrada del marco del capital para grandes bancos en Washington, D.C., es decir, en Estados Unidos. Por lo tanto, ustedes van a poder escuchar ahora a, como les digo, la vicepresidenta de Supervisión e Innovación, Michelle Bowman, en esa conferencia sobre la revisión integrada del marco de capital para grandes bancos.
Forward to all of the conversations that we're having today, especially for what we're going to take away as we're continuing to do our work within the interagency and also with the Federal Reserve on capital, and as we're looking to the future of banking more generally. I also want to take a moment to thank our panel participants before we get started with our fireside chat this afternoon. Thank you for taking time to be a part of this important conversation as we're thinking about what regulation will look like in this space and in many others. We really look forward to engaging with you as we continue to have these discussions. But today, in many ways, is about the future of banking. And with that in mind, we'd like to now turn to another influence that's shaping innovation in finance. While innovation has always played a role in the evolution of the banking industry, it's becoming clear that new technologies are not merely incremental improvements, but potentially huge leaps that could fundamentally alter the structure and function of our financial system. One of these technologies, of course, is artificial intelligence. And I can't think of anyone who's better situated or prepared to discuss AI and the role of innovation in transforming finance and our economy more generally than Sam Altman, the chairman and CEO of OpenAI. Sam, thank you for making time to be with us today. I want to welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
It might be helpful just to sort of frame where we are with the landscape of AI and innovation more broadly. Would you just kind of set that framework for us?
Sure. Only 5 years ago, AI was still thought of as something that was in the distant future if it was going to happen at all. And even 2.5 years ago, which was right around the time ChatGPT launched, it still hadn't moved past the sort of nerds in Silicon Valley. ChatGPT launched on November 30th of 2022. That was even before GPT-4. And since then, the progress has been quite rapid. The adoption, the economic impact has also started to be quite rapid. Just last week, we had a model that was able to achieve gold level performance on the IMO. This is something that I think if you told most people in the field would happen even a few years ago, they would say absolutely not. You know, that's as good as our smartest humans that are true experts in their field. We're now hearing from scientists saying they're 2-3 times more productive. We're hearing from computer programmers that say they're 10 times more productive. It's completely changed what it means to write software. We have systems already that can perform at expert level intelligence in many, many fields. Now, they cannot operate on tasks that are as long horizon as humans can, so there's still a big limitation there. But even if progress were frozen right now, which of course it won't be, I think we still have years ahead of us for society and the economy to really digest this technology and figure out what the impact is going to be. You know, there was a saying for a long time that I thought was great and we should try to get to again, which is electricity too cheap to meter. And we didn't quite deliver on that as a society, although I think we still should. It does, in fact, look like we're about to deliver on intelligence too cheap to meter. We've been able to drive down the cost of each unit of intelligence by more than a factor of 10 each year for the last 5 years. Looks like we'll do that for the next 5 years too, maybe even more. This weekend, I used one of our upcoming models to do a computer programming task that I had wanted to do, sort of like a home automation nerd, and I wanted like the lights and music in my house to do this specific thing. I knew that before this technology, it would have taken me days to do that. I was hopeful that with this technology, given our recent progress, I'd be able to do it in hours. I was able to do it in 5 minutes. The AI did almost all of the work. This is something that, you know, just a year ago, you would have paid a very high-end programmer 20 hours, 40 hours, something like that to do. And an AI did it for probably less than $1 worth of compute tokens. So this is an amazing change, and the speed with which it has happened, the speed with which it will continue for the next few years, I think is still quite unappreciated. We weren't sure even a year ago how much further our current research roadmap was going to continue if we're going to hit some sort of limit. At this point, it looks like we've got many years ahead of us of almost certain progress.
Well, fantastic. That really helps us frame the next conversation, which is you're talking to a room full of people in the financial industry and in banking, many of whom are already thinking about how they're going to use AI or already using AI. But how could you compare the potential for AI and productivity with other tech gains that we've seen in the past? You know, I'm of the age that I was in just starting business when the internet became something that we used more broadly. So how could you kind of frame that for us? And is there an analogy that you might use to describe where we are?
I've never seen a technology revolution quite like this. You know, the historical examples are, people talk about the Industrial Revolution, they talk about the Computer Revolution. The internet did change a lot of things, but I don't ever remember something that, you know, would have cost $10,000 of knowledge work a year ago costing $1 or 10 cents or whatever it would cost now. Like this is, you know, for my programming example from a minute ago, I think this is just unprecedented. Now, it doesn't work like that for everything. Things in the physical world, robots, whatever, that's going to take a lot longer. Like we will, you know, maybe in 2020, it cost $10 to have an Uber drive you across town. Actually, let me say, maybe it cost $100 to have, you know, an emergency parcel service delivered across, you know, some amount of time. And it cost $100,000 to have an application written. In 2030, maybe to have that software application written costs literally 10 cents, $100,000 down to 10 cents. And having that package delivered has gone from $100 to $1,000. And, you know, it's going to take a while for the robotics, for the full humanoid that can drive the car, take out the package, go upstairs, push the elevator button, the whole thing. That's just going to take a little while. But for tasks that can be done in front of a computer, it's quite I don't know any precedent for what's happening. The analogy that I like the most, people say, is this like the Industrial Revolution, or, is this like something else? The one I like is this is like the transistor. The transistor was a discovery of really deep science physics that turned out to be very hard to discover, easy to understand once you understood it, completely economically transformative. And the value sort of diffused throughout all of society as a massive productivity win. But there was a short period of time where there were a lot of transistors, they're called semiconductor companies, and it was this huge boom. And most of those are now kind of like in the background. You're all using devices with lots of transistors in them. They're all over this room. We don't think about this as a transistor device or that as a transistor device. We think of this as like a microphone and a computer and a screen and a camera and whatever else. But this technology was an incredible discovery. It changed what we were able to build. It became part of kind of everything pretty quickly. And you don't talk about companies much as transistor companies, except maybe companies like TSMC or SK Hynix or something like that. And in the same way, I don't think you'll be talking about AI companies for very long. You will just expect products and services to use this technology. You won't think about it that much. You will expect products and services you use to be smarter than you. And that will be a normal part of the world. Like the transistor, this is a technology that scales beautifully. So we had Moore's law with transistors. I don't think we have a name for it yet, but we have these scaling laws with AI where it just gets better and better, and we learn how to really industrialize this and put this everywhere. So I think that's the best historical analog. And we did see phenomenal productivity gains because of the transistor. But again, what we're seeing now with AI, to say nothing of like the weird cases like the fact that at some point AI can invent its own next versions and really accelerate progress even further, with what we're seeing right now, this just goes quite far.
Well, that's a great analogy, and I think when you said industrial revolution, and one of the things that we think about here at the board is the importance of understanding how labor dynamics might change as a result of that. So could you give us some your perspective on how you think the labor market and labor productivity or productivity more generally might be affected for some of the banks in the room or other industries that that might be tuning in by our live stream?
A thing that I like to remind people in our company of is no one knows what happens next. There's a lot of these like really smart sounding predictions. People make all kinds of like, oh, this is going to happen and this and the economy will go here. We have no idea. No one has that. In my opinion, no one really, this is too complex of a system. This is too new and impactful of a technology. It's very hard to predict. There are cases where entire classes of jobs will go away. There are entirely new classes of jobs that will come. And largely, I think this will look somewhat like most of history in that the tools people have to use their jobs will let them do more, achieve things in new ways. What it means to be a doctor or a lawyer or a computer programmer clearly will change, but people will still need medical care and they want to talk to a human. People still need legal advice and they'll want someone that they can trust to be on their side. People will still want computers to do things for them. But the amount that one person can do, and also the amount that we expect out of one person, will be incredible. Like all throughout history, we have these new technologies come along and people say, this is the end of work, this is the end of jobs. It turns out people seem to want unlimited stuff and have a huge desire to express their creativity and be useful to people. And I'm still waiting for that promise from the Industrial Revolution that we only had to work 4 hours a week and got to, play on the beach and hang out with our kids, and here we all are. But one thing I believe is you never fight biology. Like evolution has had too long. We are too finely shaped. The sort of biological drives that we have and what it means to be human, like technology doesn't change that. You can't beat that. And so I don't think the fundamental things that make us work and kind of animate society are going to go anywhere. And we'll probably all still be complaining that we have to work too hard, even though we're unimaginably rich. Probably if we could look from today at the people 100 years in the future, we would look at those jobs and say, those are not real jobs. You are not actually busy. You have unimaginable luxury. You have everything you could possibly need. You have nothing to do, so you're making up a job to play a silly status game and to fill your time and to feel useful to other people. And those are exactly the things that someone from 100 or 500 years ago would say about us today. And that's just the way of things. Like, I think that's great.
That's a unique vision of the future. But if we dial it back to today, as regulators, we're always very risk averse, and we're also very cautious about the way that we're safeguarding our data and ensuring that, one, we can use innovation as we're doing our work. And I know banks are very interested in ensuring that they can leverage these kinds of technologies. But the data that we are protecting in our organizations is really critical, that we're able to maintain its security. So how should we think about risks? And given that we're in government and one section of government, how do you think about government uses?
So we expected that the financial sector and also the government itself were not going to be early adopters of our technology. AI, it's gotten much better, but when we first launched, the thing that the average person thought about AI is that it hallucinated a lot. You know, I remember when we launched GPT-3, like there was this whole survey of academics who were supposed to be experts in AI, and they were like polled on what % of GPT-3 answers were like hallucinations. The real answer was like 0.1% or maybe even less. But the consensus of the academic experts was 50%. They thought half the time people were talking to ChatGPT, it was completely hallucinating something. It was obviously not true, but that branding kind of stuck with us for a while. And so we assumed that financial services, to say nothing of the government, were not going to be our early adopters. Some of our biggest early enterprise partners turned out to be financial institutions. Morgan Stanley, Bank of New York, these are major partners of ours that we're doing fantastic work with. And we were kind of like, are y'all sure? And they were like, yeah, we really want to do this. And they have figured out how to use the technology, how to structure it enough that they can rely on it for critical, many other financial institutions too, rely on it for critical processes. We are increasingly working with the government to roll out our services to lots of government employees. And a thing that someone said that stuck with me is, hey, you know, we realize this is a new technology. We've got to put some new controls on it. But the risk of us not doing this, if we don't adopt this, the risk is that we don't continue to exist as a business. We know we cannot compete with, if we're a bank, we know we cannot compete with a new bank that is really going to build an AI first experience and use AI for the entire stack of things. So it was one of the most innovative industries, and the adoption and rollout has worked better than I thought. There clearly are risks to mitigate. We talked about hallucinations. A new one on the horizon is what's sort of called prompt injections. The idea that once a model really becomes personalized to you and your data, someone else can kind of trick it to tell it something it shouldn't. You know, I may know a lot of private information about you, but I understand when I can share that with him and when I can share that with her, and that I should never share it with him. And the models, that's a new thing that's happening, is the models get all of this personal information in them. So there's some work to do there, but you know, we've been able to kind of go through these risks carefully and manage them, but really deliver a lot of the upside.
Speaking of personal information and those kinds of things, I might just pull a thread on that. And you may not know much about this, but this is something that the banking industry is really, really interested in right now, is fraud and the impersonating individuals to facilitate fraud. Are there ways that we could mitigate that kind of activity, or that we should safeguard if there is the use of AI or identification of that type of impersonation?
Great question. I am very nervous about this. A thing that terrifies me is apparently there are still some financial institutions that will accept a voice print as authentication for you to like move a lot of money or do something else. You say a challenge phrase and they just do it. That is a crazy thing to still be doing. Like AI has fully defeated that. AI has fully defeated most of the ways that people authenticate currently, other than like passwords, but all of these like fancy, you know, take a selfie and wave or do your voice or whatever. I am very nervous that we have an significant impending fraud crisis because of this. We have tried, I think other people in our industry have tried to sort of warn people like, hey, just because we're not releasing the technology doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Some bad actor is going to release it. This is not a super difficult thing to do. This is coming very, very soon. And, you know, there's obviously some reports now of these sort of like ransom attacks where people have the voice of your kid or your parent and they make this urgent call. That is going to get so compelling. Society has to deal with this problem more generally, but people are going to have to change the way they interact. They're going to have to change the way they verify, like this person calling me. Right now it's a voice call. Soon it's going to be a video FaceTime. It'll be indistinguishable from reality. And teaching people how to authenticate in a world like that, how to think about, you know, the fraud impacts. This is a huge deal.
That might be something we could think about partnering on, the identification of those hallucinations or the intentional impersonations. I think would be a really beneficial thing to engage in. But the parent, being the parent of two teenagers, one just graduated from high school and the other's a sophomore in high school. Apparently, a lot of these kids these days are using ChatGPT and other AI to facilitate their work and to complete high school. What do you have thoughts about that and how AI can be used in a beneficial way instead of in this way for kids and with teaching?
Let me tell two stories and then I will answer that. I never met my grandfather. He died before I was born, but a story that was told to me by my grandmother was about what happened. He was very good at math. What happened when the calculator came out. And he thought, you know, he always kind of liked new technology. When the calculator came out, math teachers at the time apparently said, this is a disaster. This is the end of math education. If you don't have to learn how to use a slide rule or look up, you know, stuff in the logarithms books or whatever they did at the time, why bother teach anyone math? Like this is, you know, these kids are never going to learn. And it was apparently a real meltdown. And of course, what happened is with better tools, we use our brain power for something else. We start teaching calculus in high school. We start, you know, exposing people to more advanced math. My own version of the story was when I was in junior high and Google came out, and the teachers at the high school, I heard this from the older kids, were really panicked because if there was this crazy new thing called Google, you know, you didn't have to memorize facts. You didn't have to memorize the year that a certain war was fought. You could just look it up and like, what was the point of history class? And, you know, if you didn't have to like fire up your car and drive to the library and learn to use the card catalog and then like walk down and try to find this book, but someone had checked it out and then try to find some other book. Like you didn't have to like suffer that hour. Then like, what was the point of learning? And I had gone to the like library and used the card catalog as a little kid a little bit. And I was like, no, that's a really like bad experience. I could do something better with that hour of my life. And again, what happened, so there was like this brief effort at my school to ban Google and get these pledges not to use it and whatever. And then people realized like, oh man, we can give our students more tools and we can expect more out of them. And sure, maybe they drive to the library a little bit less, but they can use that time to like think harder or, you know, come up with new ideas or do whatever. And that was really great. We expect more, we get more. The potential is higher, but the expectations are much, much higher. And I think it's the same thing now with ChatGPT. It is totally true. Back to that November 30th date, when ChatGPT first came out, kind of the first mega passionate early adopters were for sure students using it to like cheat on their finals or papers or whatever that December. And you had these school districts falling all over themselves to see who could ban ChatGPT the fastest. So we launched November 30th. You know, by December 7th, some people have banned it. By December 14th, it's like really careening off the cliff. You know, schools leave for the break and it looks like ChatGPT is like never going to be allowed inside of any educational institution again. It's a 2-week-old product. It's done. By the middle of January, you start seeing these things from principals, from superintendents, from like serious high up people in the world of education saying, actually, we made a huge mistake. This is the best learning tool ever. You know, our students, at least our sort of self-starting students, are using this to like go learn anything. If we ban this from our schools, we're just not going to be globally competitive. And we've got to retool our curriculum because this is like the calculator. And, now we have a calculator for words. So sure, maybe a take-home essay is no longer the right way to evaluate a student, but that process of learning to write an essay, that process of thinking better, because you're like, I still write things that I never show anybody else just to organize my thoughts. That's really important. So we said, great. Now, the good news is students for sure have learned how to use this to learn better, to teach themselves to think things, to think in new ways. We're going to roll out a new way to help students like learn better with ChatGPT very soon. The bad news is, on the whole, in those 2.5 years since, the curriculums have not moved as much as we might have hoped. People seem to have a lot of energy that they were going to have to start educating and evaluating in new ways. And then kind of the molasses of the education system did its thing. And we're still giving a lot of take-home essays. And I think that's a losing battle. We should be teaching people to use, give them assignments that require them to use tools like ChatGPT. Cannot be done without it, that's fine, but expect much more out of them. And I still hope we're going to get there.
Sounds like a transformation of our education system.
But it has to be. These kids are going to grow up and be adults with unbelievably powerful AI. And if we're not training them for that world, we've really missed the mark.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I'll make sure my daughter understands what our expectations are as she's finishing high school. But to move back to some things that you've talked about in the past, and to move a little bit back to the business community, you've said that AI will make small businesses, or it's going to create an environment for entrepreneurs that's going to be second to none. A new era, I think, is what you called it. How do you see small businesses? That's something that a number of our board members are really engaged in, and really we care about making sure that there's new business formation and that there's opportunity there for new entrants in that. How do you see that being transformed, and not just for the Silicon Valley small businesses or new entrepreneurs there, but more broadly?
So the first thing we saw with ChatGPT, as I mentioned, was students. One of the coolest things we saw pretty quickly after was everybody who worked at OpenAI started to get these stories of how people were using ChatGPT when it was still very novel in their business life. And everybody had their favorite, but I'll tell you my favorite. I was in an Uber, and the Uber driver was telling me about this amazing new thing called ChatGPT and asking if I'd heard of it. And I was like, oh yeah, what are you doing with it? And he was like, it's the craziest thing. I have this small business. It wasn't quite working, but now I have an employee in every area. It does contracts for me. It answers my customer support emails. It helps me come up with my marketing stuff. It designs my thing. He goes down this list. And he basically had this business running on ChatGPT. This was before it was a common thing. This is before GPT. This was an extremely early adopter. But he had figured out how to run a business on ChatGPT. And it was not like he was taking jobs from other people. His business just would have failed. He couldn't pay for the lawyers. He couldn't pay for the customer support people. He didn't know how to get someone to design the advertisements for him. He didn't know how to have a system that could automatically bid for ads on the internet for him. And ChatGPT just did all of this. Now, obviously, it's much better now. Now we have a whole industry around us that builds tools with our API to make people really, truly one-click automate all those things I just talked about. But the creative spirit of people that were just doing this inside of ChatGPT, way back in the Stone Age, really stuck with me. And now it feels like it's on easy mode, and people are doing that in all sorts of amazing ways.
It's really transformational, I think, for me. The first time I used it, I was trying to write a haiku for a Kampai toast at an innovation conference, which actually didn't go very well. But at the urging of my family, of my teenagers and my husband, who's involved in AI too, we tried to make it work. And then went back to the drawing board.
The new version should be much better at haikus.
Great.
It's very good at creative writing.
Think about that. But I wanted to make sure we have some time for audience questions, if you're up for that. I see Anil in the front row. If Anil Kashyap with the Chicago booth.
Hi. So I assume one of the things that financial institutions will begin doing is using this to mine their data, maybe to do credit scoring, credit evaluation. What do you say to the people that are worried that it's going to be picking up patterns and making decisions on things we wouldn't want to? And how are you guys thinking about protecting against that?
So this is deeply outside my area of expertise, so I'll answer in the general case. One of the things that is cool about these models is they understand us in natural language, and they're so steerable. So if you say, hey, you can go look at all this data to make a decision, but don't consider X, Y, or Z at all, like don't let that have any factor, it generally speaking will really be good at following that. The doing this in language models is different from the way that we used to do this sort of like just group all this data together into these clusters. And so you can really instruct, and it really, really follow your intent. The second thing is, I think the question behind the question there is that these models are going to be very biased in ways we don't like. I think humans are quite biased. I think AIs are dispassionate and unemotional and don't have the kind of like built up, whatever that people do. And I think it'll be possible for AI correctly built to be a significant.
Bueno, pues seguimos muy pendientes de lo que se dice en esa conferencia sobre la revisión integrada del marco de capital para grandes bancos que está teniendo lugar en esta tarde, en el día de hoy, en Washington, D.C., donde está compareciendo la vicepresidenta de supervisión, Michelle Bowman. Y eso sí, le tenemos que decir varias últimas horas importantes. La primera de todas ellas es que la Unión Europea ha advertido a Ucrania sobre el debilitamiento de los organismos anticorrupción por las votaciones. Bueno, pues la Comisión Europea de Ampliación, Marta Kos, ha criticado, eso sí, la comisaria, ha criticado este martes una votación del Parlamento de Ucrania que socava, decía, la independencia de dos instituciones clave contra la corrupción, decía precisamente, palabras textuales de Marta Kos, seriamente preocupada por la votación de hoy en Rada. Es lo que ha escrito en su red social de X. Además decía, el desmantelamiento de instituciones clave contra la corrupción en Ucrania es algo muy serio. Por lo tanto, dice que se encuentra preocupada por la situación de control que está teniendo por la falta de dos organismos de control anticorrupción en Ucrania. Otras de las últimas horas que también le tenemos que decir en Negocios Televisión importantes y tienen que ver con dos reuniones. La primera de todas ellas es precisamente que Estados Unidos mediará en la reunión entre Israel y Siria el jueves para evitar nuevas crisis. Es lo que apuntan los últimos informes sobre el conflicto. Bueno, pues Estados Unidos que da un paso adelante y que dice, según estos informes, que en principio estaría presente en esas conversaciones entre Israel y Siria para evitar nuevas crisis y que lleguen a acuerdos entre ambas partes. También otra de las reuniones importantes y que va a tener lugar en el día de mañana en Turquía es la de las negociaciones entre la delegación Rusia y de Ucrania en Estambul, en Turquía, que tendrá lugar mañana. Se esperan en un principio que tengan lugar a las 7 de la tarde. De Moscú, eso sí, la hora de Moscú, pero la fecha y la hora aún está por confirmar. Es lo que decían en un principio fuentes turcas, que tendrá lugar sobre las 7 de la tarde, hora rusa. Por lo tanto, esas conversaciones entre rusos y ucranianos, esas delegaciones que se van a enviar y que va a ser la tercera ronda de negociaciones que tenga lugar en el país otomano, es decir, en el país que preside Erdogan, el turco Erdogan. Por lo tanto, vamos a ver qué sale de esas negociaciones. Aquí estaremos muy pendientes y, como les digo, la cosa va de negociaciones estas semanas y las próximas semanas. Parece que va a haber varias visitas y varias negociaciones, ya sea en un conflicto o en otro. Bueno, pues volvemos de nuevo al directo y, eso sí, les dejamos de nuevo con la conferencia sobre la revisión integrada del marco de capital para grandes bancos, donde está hablando la vicepresidenta de supervisión, Michelle Bowman.
Craig was saying that we can teach AI human moral codes, they can learn it and reflect it. So there's a lot of talk about the ethics of AI. My question for you is, will AI evolve its own morality?
I think people get very confused about whether they want AI to be a tool or a creature. And I'm very much in the tool camp. I don't think AI will have independent morality. I think that AI can certainly learn, really study humanity and the best of our thinking. It can probably help us point out, here's a problem in your thinking, here's a thing that should be different, here is like a real moral gap. And I don't know what the giant moral gaps are in our current worldview, but I guarantee you there are some. And if it can help us find those a little bit faster, I think that would be, if it could point out those inconsistencies, I think that would be helpful. But I think it is easy to sort of impute creature-ness on AI that is not there.
Thanks. I read recently, it's weird to use the phrase traditional internet, but there are some people who say that AI will sort of destroy or really reshape the traditional internet, whether it's search, whether it's lots of other things. And obviously there's a huge economy now that we built on that. What's your sense of the amount of change that's going to happen in that world where AI will be most disruptive and where things will be more status quo?
I do think there are all of these things. So I think AI will be somewhat disruptive to the way people currently use technology. The reason I was smiling is there's this funny thing that happens. Older people or people who are used to like emailing with a certain kind of etiquette will type out the bullet points that they want to communicate, put it into ChatGPT. ChatGPT will write this long, nice, formal email with a bunch of like fluff and the bullet points somewhere in there. They'll send it across to somebody else. That person will put it back into ChatGPT and say, please summarize this for me. And on the whole, the high school students think this is ridiculous and just say, just send the bullet points. Like that kind of like formal email thing is dead. Just like, you're generating on one side, you're collapsing it back. This is ridiculous. And it's funny, but I think there's something about the way we use the whole internet that is encapsulated there. Like when I wake up in the morning, I go through a bunch of apps. I read messages across 5 or 6 different things. I go check, a thing here, a thing there, a thing there. And what I really would like, and then my phone all day long is just like blowing up at me, and it feels like I'm like walking down the Las Vegas Strip and these things flashing at me, and it's very distracting. People like shoving things in my face. And what I would like is my AI agent to be off using the internet for me, knowing when to interrupt me. It can tell when I'm, focused working. It can tell when I'm in a meeting. It can tell when I'm like got some time to think. It can override if necessary. Otherwise, it can like nicely summarize stuff, respond to things for me, pull the things together. And, I want like that bullet point condensed thing. And I don't want the fluff. And I don't have to like go around and click around. And I don't have to, respond to stuff I don't want to respond to. But that change is probably fairly disruptive to the way that the internet works now. And I think there'll have to be new business models that go along with that. Like I'll have to have new ways of paying for content. I have always wanted micropayments for content on the internet. I hope that finally happens. Maybe there'll be like new ways that we actually reduce, spam and message overload with new kinds of protocols. But it does seem like we're heading towards a very different way you will start your morning with technology when you wake up.
I'm Peter Hooper, Deutsche Bank. Sam, thank you very much for prolonging a career here, or at least raising productivity as the years advance rather than seeing a drop off. You mentioned you're expecting significant job losses and significant job gains. Could you talk a little bit more about the areas and the potential disruption that could cause?
One thing I believe, just as a general statement first, is that we have no idea really kind of like how much more labor supply it would really take to meet true demand today. When you are sitting in a doctor's office waiting room for an hour. I think that just means undersupply of doctors, or that the doctors aren't productive enough. And, you know, it would be great if the doctor's waiting around and as soon as you get there, like they're ready to see you and they have the whole thing ready to go. Lots of other examples like this. Every time you're, you know, wasting your time in any way, every time you're kind of clicking around the internet, can't quite do the productive thing. I think we are in an undersupply of labor to a degree that is going to look horrible in retrospect. Now, some areas, again, I think just like totally gone. I don't know if any of you have used one of these like AI customer support bots, but it's incredible. A couple years ago, you like call customer support, you like go through a phone tree, you talk to 4 different people, they do the thing wrong, you call back again, you wait through it. It's like hours of pain, ton of time on hold, and the thing that you want doesn't happen. Very frustrating experience. Now you call one of these things and AI answers. It's like a super smart, capable person. There's no phone tree, there's no transfers. It can do everything that any customer support agent at that company could do. It does not make mistakes. It's very quick. You call once, the thing just happens, it's done, answers right away. Great. Now, I don't want to go back there. And I also don't, it doesn't bother me at all that that's an AI and not a real person. So that's a category where I would just say, you know what, when you call customer support, you're going to be talking to an AI. And that's fine. A lot of these other things, I really do want a human doctor. ChatGPT today, by the way, most of the time can give you better, it's like a better diagnostician than most doctors in the world. And I'll like many people here, probably put my symptoms in and test results. And, you know, like there's all these stories on the internet of ChatGPT saved my life. And, you know, I had this rare disease and it found it and all these doctors didn't do it. And yet people still go to doctors. And I am not like, maybe I'm a dinosaur here, but I really do not want to like entrust my medical fate to ChatGPT with no human doctor in the loop. Would anybody here rather just have ChatGPT diagnose them than a doctor? Even though you know it's better? That's like quite interesting, right? So this is a class where we're going to keep doing things largely the way that we did. We talked earlier about this example of computer programmers. Like, again, I think it's amazing that a computer programmer is now 10 times more productive. Salaries of programmers going up extremely rapidly in Silicon Valley, so are expectations. And it turns out, I think the world wants a gigantic amount more software, 100 times, maybe 1,000 times more software. So maybe each person can now write 10 times as much software. They're going to make 3 times as much. The world will be happy because the world has wanted way more software. The programmers will be happy too. And I think we'll see many categories like that. Things in the physical world will keep being done by humans for a while, but when this robotics wave comes crashing in another 3 to 7 years, I think that's going to be a really big thing for society to reckon with. Yeah, that's kind of what I summarize it.
I think we have 2 more questions over here, and we might have time for a third, but let's go ahead. Rob, you already have the microphone. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Rob Blackwell with Interfi. We've been raised on decades of sci-fi telling us that AI is eventually going to kill us all. And since you know more about AI than arguably anybody in this room, I just want to ask you, what does keep you up at night? What are the things that you worry about when it comes to AI? And how do we prevent those things that you worry about from coming true?
I think there's 3 sort of scary categories. There's a bad guy gets super intelligence first and misuses it before the rest of the world has a powerful enough version to defend. So an adversary of the US says, I'm going to use this super intelligence to design a bioweapon, to take down the United States power grid, to, you know, break into the financial system and take everyone's money. Something that would just be hard to imagine without significantly superhuman intelligence, but with it becomes very possible. And because we don't have that, we can't defend against it. So that's broad category 1. And I think that the bio capability of these models, the cybersecurity capability of these models, these are getting quite significant. You know, we continue to like flash the warning lights on this. I think the world is not taking us seriously. I don't know what else we can do there, but it's like this is a very big thing coming. Category 2 is the sort of broadly called loss of control incidents, where that's kind of like the sci-fi movie the AI is like, oh, I don't actually want you to turn me off. I'm afraid I can't do that, you know, whatever. And I think that is less of a concern to me than the first category, but a very grave concern if it came to pass. There's a lot of work we and other companies do on model alignment to prevent that from happening. But as these systems become so powerful, that's a real concern. And then there's the third one, which I think those first two are sort of easy to think about and imagine. The third one is, to me, more difficult to imagine, but quite scary. And I'll explain what it is, and then I'll give a short-term and a long-term example. This is the category where the models kind of accidentally take over the world. They never wake up. They never do the sci-fi thing. They never open the pod bay doors. But they just become so ingrained in society, and they're so much smarter than we are. And we can't really understand what they're doing, but we do kind of have to rely on them. And even without a drop of malevolence from anyone, society can just veer in a sort of strange direction. When I was a kid and Deep Blue, that AI system built by IBM, beat Garry Kasparov in chess, I remember my dad saying, this is the end of chess, and no one's going to play it again. But then it turned out that actually, although the AI was better than humans, AI plus a human together was way better than an AI or the human. You know, the AI would present 10 options, and the human would pick the best one or something like that and play the move. And everybody said, oh, we have this wonderful future of man and machine together. It's all no problem, whatever. That lasted 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And then the AI got so smart that the human only made it worse because they didn't understand what was really going on. And the AI alone trounced the AI and human. It's been like that ever since. Now, another interesting part of that story is everybody was convinced in the 90s that was the end of chess, because if AI could beat humans, why should humans care? Chess has never been more popular than it is today. People love to watch chess. We're very focused on real people doing like real people things. So there was like a very interesting thing that happened there.
Bueno, pues seguiremos muy pendientes de esa comparecencia, pero les tenemos que contar una última hora sobre el tema de los aranceles de Estados Unidos. Y es que en el día de hoy escuchábamos esa reunión que había tenido el presidente, el mandatario americano Donald Trump, en el despacho Oval, también con el presidente de Filipinas, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., donde Donald Trump, van a escucharlo primero ustedes, decía el presidente de los Estados Unidos que podía anunciarse en el día de hoy un posible acuerdo con Filipinas y, bueno, escuchen ustedes, primero a Donald Trump y ahora les cuento enseguida qué ha pasado con ese acuerdo arancelario entre Estados Unidos y Filipinas.
But we have some fantastic military relationships with the Philippines, and that's been reinstituted. And Pete, I would say that you couldn't be happier, right, with the relationship. So I just want to say it's an honor to have you. We're going to talk about trade today, and we're very close to finishing a trade deal, big trade deal actually.
Bueno, pues Donald Trump lo decía, adelantaba de que iba a haber un acuerdo, que se podía llegar a un acuerdo en el día de hoy, que se podría anunciar un acuerdo arancelario con el gobierno de Filipinas, y Donald Trump ha vuelto a cumplir su palabra, porque el presidente de los Estados Unidos ha acordado con Filipinas reducir los aranceles sobre los productos filipinos del 20% al 19%. Por lo tanto, hay un cambio en esos acuerdos arancelarios entre Estados Unidos y Filipinas. Lo decía Donald Trump, y Donald Trump ha cumplido, ha dicho y hecho. Por lo tanto, ese cambio arancelario del 1% que van a pasar a tener los productos filipinos. Aparte de eso, también un Donald Trump que en esa comparecencia en el despacho Oval ha cargado con mucha dureza contra el expresidente americano, demócrata Barack Obama, diciendo que habían desarchivado unos papeles de su gobierno en 2016, también del 2020, unos papeles que había firmado Obama y que decía que era un criminal. Era la palabra que utilizaba Donald Trump. Obama es un criminal. Escúchelo.
It's time to start after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level.
Donald Trump, quien también ha sido preguntado en esa reunión que ha tenido con el presidente de Filipinas en el despacho Oval, bueno, pues ha sido preguntado también por Powell, decía que, bueno, Powell otra vez que tenía que bajar las tasas de interés, los tipos de interés tenía que bajarlo, decía que dentro de 8 meses podría, eso sí, salir de la Fed, y también otro de los nombres que le preguntaban eran precisamente por el presidente de China, por Xi Jinping, y decía precisamente Donald Trump, hablaba sobre la posibilidad de una reunión con el mandatario chino. Escúchenlo.
Well, we have a lot of meetings possible. President Xi has invited me to China, and we'll probably be doing that in the not too distant future, a little bit out, but not too distant. And I've been invited by a lot of people, and we'll make those decisions pretty soon.
Decía Donald Trump, tenemos muchas reuniones posibles con el presidente de China, y decía que no es esa posibilidad de una reunión no era muy lejana. Además, también Donald Trump, lo van a escuchar ustedes ahora, decía que mantiene Estados Unidos una buena relación con China actualmente.
Well, we have a very good relationship. In fact, the magnets, which is a little complex piece of material, but the magnets are coming out, you know, very well. They're sending them in record numbers. We're getting along with China very well, and I don't mind.
Le decía hace unos momentos que Donald Trump también, aparte de hablar del presidente de China, criticaba, señalaba a Powell, al presidente de la Fed, y decía que confirmaba que saldrá pronto de la Fed, el presidente Powell, porque decía que dentro de 8 meses podría haber un cambio. Bueno, pues aparte de eso, también estaba allí, se encontraba Besen, y le preguntaba a Donald Trump por qué pasaba con la Reserva Federal de los Estados Unidos de América, y Besen que decía que había una investigación en curso, que iba a hacer una investigación sobre las decisiones que estaba teniendo la Reserva Federal. Escúchenlo.
I called yesterday and this morning for the Fed to do a big internal investigation to understand not their monetary policy, but everything else. The Fed has had big mission creep, and that's where a lot of the spending's going. That's why they're building these new or refurbishing these buildings. And I think they got to stay in their lane. And I think that based on the way they cut rates last fall, they should be cutting rates now.
Bueno, pues eso era lo que decía el presidente de los Estados Unidos de América, Donald Trump, en esa reunión con el presidente, con su homólogo de Filipinas, y les recordamos que decía Donald Trump que iban a llegar a un acuerdo. Pues ha habido un acuerdo arancelario entre Estados Unidos y Filipinas, donde los productos filipinos pasan de tener un arancel del 20% al 19%, baja un 1% en los productos, ese arancel a los productos de Filipinas. Bueno, ahora tenemos que mirar al mercado de las criptomonedas, que como ustedes saben, cada vez más personas invierten en este mercado de las criptomonedas. En primer lugar, tenemos a Bitcoin Price, que tiene una subida al alza, se encuentra ahora mismo en estos momentos con un 1,29% y tiene un coste de mercado de $119.144. Después tenemos a Ethereum Price, que tiene una bajada, que está en bajada con un 1,51% de bajada y tiene un coste de $3.697 actualmente. Y después tenemos a XRP, que está en bajada un 0,51% y tiene un coste de $3,56. Después, eso sí, tenemos a Solana, que tiene una subida del 3,75% y un coste de $202. Después tenemos a BNB, que está al alza con 0,43% y tiene un coste, un valor de mercado ahora mismo de $767. Después tenemos a USDC, que tiene una bajada del 0,01% y tiene un coste del $0,99. Después, eso sí, tenemos también a Dogecoin, que Dogecoin está en bajada con un 5,14% Y ojo al precio que presenta ahora mismo en mercado, que es de $0,26. Después, Cardano. Tenemos a Cardano también está en bajada con un 1,44%. Y eso sí, tiene un coste de mercado actualmente, un valor de $0,88. Y por último, eso sí, tenemos a Tron Price, que tiene una bajada, está en descenso en 0,35% y tiene un coste de mercado de $0,31. Por lo tanto, así están actualmente el mercado de las criptomonedas, del Bitcoin, y ese mercado que cada vez más gente se interesa por él y que aquí en Negocios Televisión le refrescamos, le decimos cómo se encuentra en todo momento. Eso sí, vamos a hacer una pequeña pausa publicitaria y enseguida está aquí mi compañera Alma Navarro con el cierre de Wall Street.
Que llueva, la Virgen de la cueva. Que llueva, los pajarillos cantan. La nube se levanta, la luna se levanta. Que llueva, la Virgen de la cueva. Los pajarillos cantan, la luna se levanta. Que sí, que no, que caiga un chaparrón. Que sí, que no, que cante el labrador.
Silver Gold Patrimonio nace en 2018 con el objetivo de innovar en el mercado de los metales preciosos de inversión, ofreciendo nuevas alternativas para que cualquier persona, familia o empresa pueda entrar en el fantástico mundo de los metales de inversión de forma sencilla y acompañada por consultores expertos en el sector. Silver Gold Patrimonio quiere avanzar contigo.
Mudarte de ciudad es un gran cambio y alquilar tu casa puede parecer arriesgado. ¿Estará tu vivienda protegida? Con SEAC, olvídate de preocupaciones. Nosotros garantizamos tu renta, pase lo que pase. Disfruta de tu nueva etapa con total confianza. Alquila tranquilo. SEAC responde.
Donald Trump, que llega a la cumbre de La Haya para ser la peor pesadilla europea. No salimos de una y entramos en otra. Hay que redefinir el artículo 5. Vamos, ¿cómo? Está pensando sobre todo Sánchez. Redefinir el artículo 5 con un pero. ¿Cuánto hay y cuánto paga cada uno de los países? Ha llegado Mr. Marshall, ha llegado el imperialista, ha llegado el rey de los europeos y Rutte se ha puesto de rodillas. Gracias a ti, los europeos estamos gastando a esfuerzas, gracias a ti, en una posición de Rutte que da absoluta vergüenza ajena, porque Rutte es un perdedor de elecciones que entonces han dicho, vente a la OTAN, que es parte de la fiesta. Y ahí llevaron a Rutte para que no le faltara trabajo. Le han puesto a un europeo para que le lama los zapatos al estadounidense. Y entonces ha venido el estadounidense, se ha puesto la gorra y ha dicho, bienvenido, Mr. Marshall. Quita, leche, quita, ¿no? No, debería pensar, qué pesado. Con la sonrisita esta que le deben enseñar en el club. ¿Te hace gracia que tengamos que